Welcome back to Big Mac Down School. I'm Daniel, and this is my look through the pages of issue 8 of Combat Patrol magazine. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button if you want to see more of my content, and drop a comment if you have any feedback. This week in Combat Patrol we get the final piece of the sprue for our squad of 10 termagants. The Partworks comic reader pointed out in my last video that termagants we get through the mag are slightly different to the multi-part ones you can buy from Games Workshop for £28, so it's not a direct comparison, but it's the closest we have to compare, short of buying some of these second hand off eBay or from someone breaking down one of the starter boxes that they come in. So while that 30% saving seems reasonable, you can always find these cheaper if you do a little digging. On the first of the internal pages we're met with Paint C Guide 4, which takes us through the painting our termagants in that usual step-by-step basis. Once again, as this mag comes with no spray primers, you're advised to paint straight onto bare plastic, something that many experienced hobbyists will tell you never to do, but I'm here to tell you that they're wrong. You can absolutely do it, but spray priming does make that first layer of paint stick a little easier. Don't forget to revisit any areas where you get a little messy and tidy up your base coats if needs be. It's better to do it at this stage than further down the line where you'll have more colours in play. On the fourth page we get an idea of what our rippers and termagants should look like if we're following the guides, and even though there's only 2 colours on them, they're already coming to life in my opinion. More in-universe lore next, where we're learning about the Departmentum Unitorum. To put it simply, this is the logistical arm of the Imperium. They're tasked with the challenge of getting ammunition, fuel and food to the furthest frontiers of mankind in the far reaches of the galaxy. As with all things in the Imperium, the Departmentum Unitorum is revered and feared in equal measure. It can be the ultimate saviour, delivering vital supplies to turn the tide against the many horrors that mankind faces, or the embodiment of frustration, where reams of paperwork have to be completed to request a single bullet or las pack. Some Unitorum armoured containers have travelled the length and breadth of the Imperium, and despite all its faults, without the Departmentum Unitorum, the Imperium will collapse in a matter of months. Reliable supply chains are key to a realm the size of the galaxy. Unitorum approved gear is stamped with this symbol of standardisation for reference. On the next page we get some gritty artwork depicting a moment from the Second Tyrannic War, with Tyranids of High Fleet Kraken taking on some massively outnumbered Ultramarines. After the First Tyrannic War, the Imperium had arrogantly dared to hope that they'd banish the Tyranids forever. How wrong they were. Spearheaded by the High Fleet designated Kraken, the Tyranids returned to the galaxy on a scale never before seen. The ever-adapting hive mind employed new tactics after being repelled in the First Tyrannic War. They attacked on numerous fronts at once, like the tendrils of the mythical sea beast and namesake. It took the combined efforts of several Space Marine chapters to halt the progress of the Xenos threat at Icar 4. It was not just humanity facing a fight for survival. On the city ship of Ianden, the Eldari of that particular craft world fought too, and in some cases beyond death. Kraken boarded and overran the craftworld's population in search of more biomass. By the time the beasts were driven off, 80% of the craftworld's population lay dead or dying. On Icar 4, meanwhile, the Imperium brought the Second Tyrannic War to an end by employing the adaptive tactics previously seen employed by the Tyranids themselves. Marneus Calgar led a force of veterans hardened by action in the First Tyrannic War and the defence of Macragge, in a series of devastating assaults on the forces of Kraken. Once again the Swarm Lord took to the field, and once again he was defeated in a duel by Calgar himself. The Tyranids' insatiable hunger for biomass had earned them the appropriate moniker of the Great Devourer. This is no mere nickname. Everything the Tyranids encounter is eaten and incorporated into the swarm, the biomass transformed into fresh reinforcements at horrifying speed. The arrival of the Tyranids means the death of a world more often than not. The invasion takes place in a series of well-established stages. Invade. The initial approach is subtle, with vanguard organisms making landfall and assassinating key targets. Meanwhile, cults tainted with Tyranid DNA rise up, sowing chaos amongst the planet's populace. Overwhelm. Once a foothold is established, the Tyranids will attack in force, the hive mind sending wave after wave of warrior organisms into the fray, each one bringing the defenders closer to annihilation. Consume. Once all resistance is shattered, the Tyranids begin to feed, specially adapted feeder beasts deforesting the planet and biological void ships drinking the oceans dry. Termagants. Here we get the rules and a bit of flavour for our latest unit to be added to our hive fleet, the background table bringing the latter dependent on a roll of a D3. Over the page we find what might at first seem like an underwhelming data sheet for the Termagants, but what they lack in a threat they make up for in numbers, which we'll have soon enough when we receive our second batch of 10 by issue 20. Onto some game rules next, where we learn a little more about charging and combat. A charge move is something you can do after the shooting phase, assuming you want to get a unit into close combat. For most charges, you'll roll 2d6 and your charging unit can move up to the distance indicated by the result of the roll. In the given example, a successful charge is made because the roll was enough to make it into engagement range on the model that was the target of the charge. In the failed charge example, the roll fell short. Engagement range is usually a 1-inch perimeter around the model's base. The next page covers a little more of the fight phase, including the order in which models take action, charging units and models with abilities that grant them the right to fight first, followed by any remaining combatants. We also learn about piling and consolidation moves here. Scenario 4. Ambush Predators. This week we see a squad of 5 Infernus Space Marines against 2 squads of Tyranids, namely 3 von Ryan's Leapers and 10 Termagants. Our mission sees players familiarising themselves with moving around cover, using the Tyranid Terrain Battlefield Essentials cards to represent something impassable that also blocks line of sight. To keep things simpler and somewhat more balanced to make it a closer game, we'll be ignoring the von Ryan's Leapers fights first rule in this mission, as well as the Termagant shooting attacks. It seems a little odd to ignore a rule that was included in the rules focus for this issue, like fights first, but as they like to drip feed the rules slowly, I'm sure it's to ensure that you're able to take it all in bit by bit. It's also worth noting that our Infernus Marines are remaining stationary throughout the battle. While this is a small board, I think there's still scope for some improved gameplay with the Marines are moving, both players getting a better feel for the movement phase. As usual, the picture diagrams spell a few things out for us, showing examples of how things might turn out if movement and dice rolls go a certain way. The battle continues until one side is victorious and the appropriate narrative paragraph can be read by the victor to see how that affects their forces before the next issue scenario is presented to us. Closing the magazine, we find that next week's issue comes with 2 pots of paint to add to our collection. The following week we get our hands on the next Space Marine character, a librarian in Terminator armour, as well as a Citadel medium base brush to help us get our minis painted. I look forward to showing you what added value we can find in the next issue, but until then, I'll see you on the battlefield.